Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. We're going to begin, inshallah, with a recitation from the Quran just to get into the best state of mind, the best state of heart, inshallah ta'ala. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم أولئك هم الفاسقون. لا يستوي أصحاب النار وأصحاب الجنة. أصحاب الجنة هم الفائزون. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر. سبحان الله عما يشركون. هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا مولانا محمد عليه وعلى آله أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم. It is good to see everyone here, mashallah, on a Friday night in the masjid. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from you. May Allah reward you. May Allah keep it sincere. And may Allah grant victory and autonomy and victory and strength and aid to the people of Palestine, Ya Rabb, Ameen. May Allah allow us to see a free, liberated, self-determining Palestine, Ya Rabb, Ameen. We're going to be continuing, inshallah, the journey through the Seerah, through the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we're just starting the Medina phase, what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did in Medina. And the legacy of the Prophet ﷺ in Medina is incredible. Like when you look at the study of history, you look at the study of politics, what the Prophet ﷺ did in the 9 years that he was in Medina is nothing short of incredible. Because imagine coming to a community that has multiple families, multiple tribes, multiple traditions, multiple histories, baggage, and more. You have the Aus and the Khazraj with multiple tribes that have been at war for a long time. And the Prophet ﷺ was able to unite them. There were Jewish communities, 8, 10 different tribes, clans, all within Banu Qaynuqa and Banu Nadir. And Nabi ﷺ was able to unite them. There were people that just came from Mecca. They had left everything and began a new life in Medina. And there were the Ansar, the people that gave victory in Medina. He was able to unite them. There were the hypocrites that were planning to have their own leader. And they posed an existential threat to the community. And the Prophet ﷺ was able to handle them. He created a community, and that community agreed on a written constitution that would be called the Constitution of Medina. So when we speak of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ was not just a prophet in the sense that he taught a message. He was not just a messenger in the sense that he carried a message. His example is an incredible one for us to study. Why? Because he lived. His example was the lived experience of Islam. He built a community, he signed a constitution, he dealt with threats, he led wars, he managed defensive strategies and campaign. He built a local police force that was responsible for protecting Medina. He built an ethics community that was responsible for making sure the market, the trade is fair. He built a governing council that was responsible for giving shura and giving their input economically and otherwise. He built a senior committee that was responsible for sharing their perspective and also voicing their concerns. And he had an open door policy where everybody could access him. And he built the masjid. He built the masjid. And we mentioned this, that the land that he built the masjid on belonged to 2 orphans in the city of Medina. And he didn't just take the land for free because people offered, we'll take care of it, it's our legacy. No, he paid for it himself. So nobody comes down the line and says, no, we took advantage of this or that. And how was the land chosen? The land was chosen by the camel. The Prophet ﷺ said, wherever the camel sits, kneels down, that is where we're going to build the masjid. And the Prophet ﷺ spent some of his own money and Abu Bakr's money. He purchased the land himself. And when it came to construction, he built the masjid himself. He's 53 years of age at this time. With the legacy, with him being the Prophet, the messenger, he could sit back and he could give instructions. But no, that was not the Prophet ﷺ. He took his own axe and he built. He would chop the wood himself. He would lay down the foundations, the leaves and the palm leaves and the branches that were put on top as the roof. He himself would climb to make sure that that is done. The companions would share, imagine you're working hard and it's hot. So to blow off some steam and to relax a little bit, they would share some poetry. They would recite poetry. So the Prophet ﷺ would recite along them. He would use the same tone to speak back and create his own words. Imagine like spoken word back and forth. So he was what? He was in many ways one of the people, working for the people to serve the people, using all the resources available to him at that time. And when he built the masjid, what did he do? Imagine all of the things, subhanAllah, he made the masjid for. So at the very back of the masjid, there were the places for Ahlul Suffah. Anybody that was financially struggling, anybody that did not have a home, anybody that needed a place of refuge, the Prophet ﷺ dedicated a component of the masjid for them. So there's an example of the elder lady who used to clean the masjid, and she had a very, very traumatic past. She came from a very abusive past because she was a slave. She was in the most horrific of ways you can imagine. She was abused. And yet when Islam came along, she believed in the power of Islam, the emancipatory power of Islam, and she became Muslim. And when she became Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ, he gave her a space in the masjid. She could stay in the back of the masjid if she wishes. And also he gave her a way to feel fulfilled By preparing and cleaning and making sure the masjid is kept in the best conditions. And we know the famous story, when she passed away, the companions thought just somebody else who passed away, it's not that important. So they buried her, they prayed the janazah, and the Prophet ﷺ came and he found that she's not there. He hasn't seen her for a few days in a row. So he asked, where is she? What happened? They told him, Ya Rasulullah, we heard that she passed, we took care of it, we buried her. So the Prophet ﷺ said, why didn't you let me know? Why didn't you let me know? You know why this is important? Because sometimes what we do is we build infrastructure. We have all of these infrastructure in place. But what's missing is the human touch, the human relationship. The Prophet ﷺ did not just build a place for the people to belong, but he would personally check on them. And one of them passes away, the Prophet ﷺ asks, he noticed she's no longer there. So he asks, we buried her. So does he say, khalas, oh, she passed? No, he doesn't do that. He says, I'm going to go to the graveyard where she's buried, and I'm going to personally pray on her and make dua for her. Every human being in that community meant something for the Prophet ﷺ. And he showed appreciation for the people in that community. The children of Medina, one of the things that Anas ibn Malik says that he found most unique about the Prophet ﷺ that stood out is the fact that he would remember the names of the children and would remember their parents. And when he would meet them, he would say, how is your parent doing? And my dad is sick. Well, how is he doing now? Meeting a week later, how is he feeling now? So he would constantly be engaged with the community, checking upon them and making sure that they're okay. And what was the center, the heartbeat of the community that he built, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was the masjid. The masjid was the heart of the community. The companions would wrestle in the masjid. They would play, the children would play and run around in the masjid. The Prophet ﷺ would do his educational circles in the masjid, dream interpretation circles in the masjid after Fajr. He would plan and he would strategize for his military defensive campaigns and offensive campaigns in the masjid. The floor wasn't carpeted back then, it was made out of sand. So he ﷺ would draw the mountains, would draw where the troops would be, would draw the formation, and other companions would suggest and put their input, share their input. If somebody came, so when the Christians of Najran, Yemen came to visit, the Prophet ﷺ hosted them in the masjid. When the war captives, when the captives were caught in the war, where did they stay? They stayed in the masjid. So the masjid was the heart of the community. When people came to have negotiations or conversations about Islam or da'wah, ambassadors from different communities, when Persia sent their representatives, when Kisra sent his representative, when the Byzantine ruler sent the representative, the Prophet ﷺ met them at the masjid. However, there were certain things that could not be done in the masjid, restricted. What could not be done in the masjid? You lose something outside, don't come into the masjid and make an announcement, I lost it. No. So don't keep matters of the material affairs, personal affairs, keep that out. Political chants, national chants, divisive chants, don't bring to the masjid. The Prophet ﷺ forbade that. Anything that would desecrate the masjid, so profanity, obviously not accepted. And even the hudud, we have certain penal laws in Islam, like somebody commits adultery, there's a specific punishment. Those punishments were not to be taken in the masjid, not to be taking place in the masjid. Judicial decisions would not be taking place in the masjid. Contractual differences, you have a contract difference and you want to settle it, doesn't happen in the masjid, it happens outside. So he ﷺ would then invest in the infrastructure, what would eventually be the court of Medina. And he built his homes that he would eventually settle into, closely connected to the masjid. And many of the companions had a door where they would access the masjid directly. So the Prophet ﷺ, the room that he was with Aisha in and they lived together in, he would walk straight into the masjid. Abu Bakr had an access to the masjid. Other companions had access to the masjid. But when the masjid expanded, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that all of those doors would be shut, they would be closed off because of the orientation of the masjid would change, except the house of Abu Bakr that remained open out of respect for Abu Bakr. So imagine that's the way it was. The masjid, you have your homes around the masjid, and some of the senior companions, their door, they would walk straight into the masjid. That was the masjid for them. That's how central it was. That's how unifying it was, and that's how, subhanAllah, important it was. And coming back to the constitution of Medina, when we talk about Medina, the constitution of Medina would become very important. Why? Because there are, more than 45 different clauses. And I encourage you, especially students in sociology and politics, read the constitution of Medina. Read it closely. What did the Prophet ﷺ said in the constitution of Medina? Number one, every community has autonomy to manage their wealth and their money and their trade in the way that they see fit. There are guidelines and principles, but the government is not going to go. The state is not going to what? It's not going to no, we're not going to mandate or we're not going to interfere. That's an interesting point. Two, the Prophet ﷺ, he maintained the autonomy, religious autonomy of the Jewish communities. So they could have their own family courts, they could have their own judicial courts. Any issues that would arise, you could go to the rabbis of Medina, your specific rabbi for your specific community that you feel comfortable with, and they would settle the issue. And anytime there was a need for escalation between that, there was an agreement among the Jewish community to settle that difference. And only when it escalates besides that point or beyond that point, it would escalate to the Prophet ﷺ, who would help them come to an agreement based on, again, their reading, based on their understanding of the Torah, their understanding of the Midrash, their understanding of the Talmud. So imagine that level of what? That level of autonomy and religious protection, what that means. And of course, there's a whole discussion in Islamic judicial law and Islamic politics on what it means to have a constitution like that, what it means to have a permanent agreement, a temporary agreement, a truce of some kind. What conditions can you have? What conditions can you not have? So a lot has been written in terms of the siyasa al-shar'iyya when it comes to, and all of that work, much of that work early on, Medina, is focused on the readings of the constitution of Medina. The Prophet ﷺ, in the constitution of Medina, he also mandated that everyone has a shared responsibility of protecting Medina. So anytime there's an attack, everyone shares responsibility. And everyone had a responsibility to protecting their section of the city. Any breaking of that treaty, there were consequences and punishments that would be applicable based on that community's reading of their own scriptural law. So the Jewish community, if they were to break that covenant, they would be punished in accordance with the Jewish law. The Muslim community, if they were to break that covenant, they would be punished according to the Quran and the Sunnah. And not only that, listen to this, the Prophet ﷺ made an amazing condition in the constitution of Medina. Any ongoing issues between Quraysh and the Prophet ﷺ, it's up to the Prophet ﷺ and his muhajirin to deal with that. So the rest of Medina doesn't have to inherit this issue between the Prophet ﷺ and Quraysh. They don't have to, but they all have a shared responsibility of defending Medina and the values of Medina. So someone comes to attack at home, everybody's going to defend. But any offensive campaigns, anything that needs to be done to kind of offset what was done to the Muslims in Mecca, that was not the entire responsibility of the city. That was the responsibility of the Prophet ﷺ and the muhajirin that left Mecca and came to Medina. So these are all incredible points to think about and incredible points to reflect on. Building the masjid, building it using his own money, not taking any money, paying extra, so that nobody comes along and says the Prophet ﷺ took advantage of a good community, took advantage of a hospitable community. Building the homes using his own wealth, using his own hands, investing his own physical labor into those projects. Creating the Constitution of Medina, consulting the committee that would eventually put those points together, having all of these different communities come together and sign a constitution like that, that in itself is an accomplishment. It's a transformation. So anybody that comes along and tells you, oh, Islam did not appreciate multiculturalism or diversity, Islam is very antagonistic to that, Islam is very aggressive, self-imposing, all of these claims that people have, especially after the colonial encounter, where they superimpose subhanAllah, their own political agendas onto readings of Islam, unfortunately, go back to that. Look at the Constitution of Medina. There's a written historical document that proves otherwise. It's a physical manifestation, a social contract, a legally binding contract that shows the initial intent of the Prophet ﷺ to coexist with many different communities in this shared space. And then, in addition to that, the Prophet ﷺ created the brotherhood, the sisterhood, the mu'akha of Medina. And what a beautiful system. Where he would take one person from the Aus, one person from the Muhajirin, one person from the Khazraj, and sometimes different shuffles, and he would say, you three become brothers. You're brothers now. What does that mean? So they're shared values, they have a shared business interest, they have shared visions, plans, goals, educational goals, whatever it may be, shared military experience, strategy. So he would create these brotherhoods between them. And what these brotherhoods meant is anytime one of them was struggling financially, legally, the other would help. Anytime one of them needed assistance, the other would cover. So a lot of the people from Mecca that didn't have money and they just came fresh, imagine the refugees, they're displaced. They're coming when they left their businesses and their businesses were taken over by the Meccans. So now the people of Medina are encouraged, share your wealth. And these are smart people. They're good business people. You give them a little bit now, they're going to give it back to you and more. So it created this system of brotherhood, this system of shared, share your experiences, share your values, share your money, share your time, share your advice together. And there was this, subhanAllah, Azhari professor that wrote about what his dissertation was, the impact, the legacy of that brotherhood all the way till now. The amount of institutions that would arise out of that, the amount of marriages that would come from that mu'akha. Imagine the legacy continues till this day. There are awqaf endowment systems that were set up back then through those brotherhood systems, sisterhood systems that exist till this day. And we have examples of people that said, I'm going to be part of that system, but I'm not going to take advantage of it. Among them is Abdurrahman ibn Auf. When he was told by his pal from the people of Medina, I'll give you half of my money, I'll give you a home. I even have like multiple wives. I'll even divorce one of them and give one to you if that's what you wish for. Imagine going that far, that generosity. And what did Abdurrahman ibn Auf say? Thank you so much. I appreciate that gesture. It means a lot, but no thank you. I don't want your home. I don't want your money. I don't want your family. Definitely not going there. But simply show me where the market is. Tuluni ala suq. Show me where the market is. And Abdurrahman ibn Auf, he would go, he would buy an axe, according to some. He would go and chop some wood and then come and sell that wood, and he would then use that money to buy something else. And subhanAllah, within a few weeks, the Prophet ﷺ realized that Abdurrahman ibn Auf was able to build a house. He was able to get his family, get married, all of these things. And now he's, dressed in pretty good clothing. So he's like, well, what did you do? It's like, I did what a businessman does. And Abdurrahman ibn Auf, when he passes away, he would have a net worth close to, subhanAllah, 50 to 60, 70 billion US dollars, depending on inflation. So we're talking about in the billions of dollars back then. So don't think that these companions were what? Don't think that they were poor, that they were impoverished. No, they had the capacity to build wealth. They had the strategy to do so. And the Prophet ﷺ, in many ways, he set that foundation and the principles through which they were able to succeed. And inshallah, we're going to continue over the next couple of weeks discussing Medina, discussing what happens in Medina, discussing the events that would take place, building to Badr, building to Uhud, the battles, and the legacy of the Prophet ﷺ. So you're encouraged to come, inshallah. May Allah bless you, give you barakah and success. Please do not forget the people of Palestine in your dua. The petition, the appeal this morning, the tweet, the appeal this morning, this khutbah from the community. Please use your voices. Do not be silenced. Do not feel like we're giving up on this. No, use your voices to vote. We have as pretty much 150 imams in the Imam Council, more than 20 different organizations coming together, consulted together to discuss, and all have pretty much unanimously agreed that this election is uncompromisingly important. It can determine the future of our community here. And the last thing we want is people to be detained because of the support for Palestine, people losing their jobs, losing the capacity to voice and protest verbally and peacefully for Palestine. So please make sure that you look at the MPAC, the Muslim Public Affairs Council, look at the research that they've done, look at the assessment that they've done, look at the interview questions that they've done, look at the parameters that they've set to make sure that your representative, if you choose to use that voice, is going to be principled, is going to stand up for Palestine, is going to make a difference in at least minimizing harm for the community. Please make sure that you do your own research, interview, ask, call your local representative. And even if you don't live in a riding where Muslims can be that deal breaker or make that difference, if you live in a riding where there's like 4 Muslims or 2 Muslims, the fact that you show up and vote and use your voice, that in itself in the long term becomes an important message to the rest of the society that we will not disengage, regardless of how hard the effort is to silence, to muffle, to mute, to mutate our understanding, to misrepresent. We will not disengage. And I know a lot of us feel burnt out, feel very heavy, feel pained. My wife's family, as I mentioned, is from Gaza, so we know what it's like. But you put that aside, you build your strength, and you keep going, and you fail to give up, and you feel what? You feel to buckle under the pressure. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us resilience, give us strength, and allow us to do what needs to be done, inshallah, to continue to advocate and to continue to stand strong. Jazakumullah khair. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك والسلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته.